been quite the turn of events in the last, I'd say, 12 hours even. You know, how are you guys holding up? You guys doing all right?
Well, when I got up this morning, I didn't turn on the TV or the computer right away. And when I turned it on, about maybe an hour after I woke up, I turned the computer on first, and that's when I saw 50 plus dead and 400 wounded. And when I saw that, well, Sandy was in the restroom when she came in. I told her, prepare herself, that the shooting that we knew was coming came today.
I think those of us who have been through a mass casualty shooting and have fought hard for common sense gun laws that haven't passed have all known that this kind of thing was going to happen. You know, we've had churches, we've had schools, we've had movie theaters, and now we have a concert. So I think Americans are beginning to wake up and understand that they're not safe anywhere because of our easy access to being able to buy guns that are meant for war.
So I heard that on the news that I could hear the rifle shots, of course, everybody could, but it was automatic fire. I can tell the difference because since our daughter was killed, I've been doing a lot of studies on ballistics and the rifle that killed her. And I know that AR-15, which is the weapon of choice for mass murderers, because you can kill more people with that than you can a bomb, especially the way he knew how to use it. The killer in Aurora would have had a much, much higher body count, maybe like this one here, because he had 300 people in that theater trapped, but his magazine jammed. So the only difference between that day, we have passed no laws to protect ourselves, and the manufacturer of that magazine has made it so it doesn't jam. So the equipment is getting better, the laws are getting worse, and this is not the last one. We're going to have, next time we'll probably have 3 shooters in different directions. You can't stop the crowds. The problem is we have to put some kind of regulations on military weapons of war.
We have had good gun laws in states. We passed some good laws here in Colorado. And 18 states now have expanded background checks on all gun sales. So that's helping. But when you can't get your federal government to protect the public and look at the public safety issue that this is, therein lies the problem.
To say that you're frustrated is probably an understatement.
It is an understatement. But we've been living with frustration since
5 years.
A few days after our daughter was killed. And what we found out, that the victims, this is just the beginning for these victims. They're going to get victimized as we were with a nonprofit that collected all the funds for us. We had to fight for those because they were going to keep them and distribute them between people in their community and not give them to the people that the funds were given to. So that's going to happen. It happened in Newtown. It happened in San Bernardino. We were there. And it would have happened in Orlando.
But we stopped it.
But we got it to Orlando and made sure that it went to the National Compassion Fund, which gives 100% to the victims. And that never was the case before. That's the first time we've been successful.
And we're going to be successful again. We know that nonprofits sometimes aren't as forthright as they could and should be, and their intent was to collect the money and then distribute it to other nonprofits in the community, even though people thought that they were donating directly to the families. So the National Compassion Fund makes sure that that doesn't happen, that it goes directly to the families, and we're very proud of that work.
When you see the number rising, You guys have been there.
Yeah. We know the pain that these people are going through right now, and the shock and the disbelief and the questioning of how does this keep happening. And we thought that our government was doing something to stop the carnage, not encourage it. And finding out that that wasn't the case, that they're actually passing laws to encourage this kind of thing to continue to happen, was shocking. And these people are now in the process of finding out how unsafe the public truly is.
There is a law in committee right now that has passed committee, is going to the House for a vote. This law is a suppressor law that would suppress the sound of gunshots. This law would have enabled the killer at Aurora or the killer anywhere to fire a weapon without anyone realizing that it was a gun that was being fired. So in the name of hearing loss for hunters, they want to get this law passed so that anyone that can buy an automatic weapon, and that's anyone, can buy a silencer for it and can proceed to do whatever harm he wants to do silently. That law is being voted on, will be voted on in the House of Representatives in a few weeks.
This is what we're up against. Silencers have been protected and registered for many, many years.
Since 1934.
Yeah, since 1934.
And now they want to roll it back.
And now they want to roll that back because you can sell more guns and you can sell silencers. So.
When I say they, I'm talking about the NRA, the gun lobby, and mostly Republican congressmen.
Unfortunately.
Can you kind of talk me through what some of the folks today in Las Vegas are feeling?
I can absolutely talk from a mother's heart on what those families are feeling today. It's a grief so deep that it's guttural. The screams, the phone calls, the disbelief that this could have happened when your child or your loved one just went to a concert. We always think about the wounded that survive, and we forget, as a society, we forget about them, and our hearts are with those survivors, because we know from our own experience here in Colorado that their lives are forever altered. Their dreams are often destroyed. And no one really understands unless you've been involved in this happening to you. And you don't want to wait until it happens to you to get involved. Tom Brokaw today said something about every American should be in the discussion about gun regulation in this country. This is not about taking anybody's guns away. This is about protecting the lives of innocent people, children, young people. Most shootings happen to younger people between the ages of 18 and 26. That's the population that is usually the most affected. So we're wiping out a whole generation. We lose 33,000 Americans every year to gun violence. That's not okay. It's costing our society $227 billion every year. That's billion with a B. And that's what it's costing our society. And we're pretending that it's okay. We're pretending that, in fact, we've had people say, well, that's just part of what happens when you protect the 2A. You know, your daughter was just a casualty. Well, that's not okay. I don't want my daughter to have been a casualty. I don't want other people's daughters and sons and loved ones to be a casualty because of the 2A. We need to wrap our brains around this and our hearts around this. To not wrap our hearts around the issue that we're killing our own at a rate that's higher than any other industrial country in the entire world. In fact, you can take like 12 of them and put them together and it doesn't even come close to what we're doing here on our own soil. This is a war on our own soil.
So don't tell me and don't let me hear you say that it's the mentally ill that we have to worry about. This guy was not mentally ill. This guy was upset about something in his life, just like all the other mass shooters, every single one of them, and most of them are white, privileged. This was an older white man, most of them are young, but it's the same reason. They're frustrated, they want to kill themselves, they're tired of the society they live in, and they want to take out as many people as they can, and there's no stopping that unless you regulate the guns. You can't regulate the mentally ill. We have just as many mentally ill in this country as any of the other 10 national industrial nations in the world, but we're the only ones that lets anybody go into the store and buy a silencer to put on an AR-15, a military rifle that was developed for the military, and if he'd have dropped a bomb in that crowd, he wouldn't have killed as many people. That gun is designed to kill a lot of people. It was automatic fire, so he may have had an illegal automatic weapon. It's illegal to own one in this country. Well, you can buy one, but it's closely regulated. But it could have been an AR-15 that's easily changed into an automatic weapon. You can buy adapters or kits for them, or you can do it yourself. It's not a big problem to change a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon, and that's what he had, an automatic weapon.
I mean, you could probably learn that stuff on YouTube these days.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so much out there.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and you can build a bomb, or you can get an AR-15 and make it automatic.
Does something like this just charge you guys even more?
Yeah. It makes us go out and get more people to join us. That's what we're doing. Our new organization called Survivors Empowered. It's brand new. We just started 501c3. We travel in this trailer all over the country, and we get people to join us. And now we're going to have 50, maybe 100, 200. There's going to be 1,000 people affected by this killing. More, much more than that, because they all have brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, everyone that was killed. And the wounded. The wounded is I mean, it's bad enough our daughter was killed, but if she'd have been shot in the head and paralyzed, and she'd never be herself again, it would be horrible for her and for us to live through, because we've seen it happen. There's the Aurora shooting. There was 3 people in wheelchairs or 4 people in wheelchairs right now. Their life is totally.
And 2 with severe brain injuries, and it's we know survivors across the country. And we see their pain, we see their struggles, not just emotionally, but the physical aspects of surviving a gun wound, especially with an ammo like 223s. They're devastating to the body. They're made to destroy as much bone and tissue as possible. They can go through your body into somebody else's body, through walls, and we've seen it time and time and time again. And these weapons are out on the street. We have over 300 million guns out there. This guy had 10 of them. Who knows how many more he might have left at home, but he had 10 weapons with him. So where gun sales are down, and a lot of people aren't thinking about ever owning a gun, the ones who do own guns and the ones who shouldn't own guns but do own guns own multiple guns. Mm-hmm. So we really need as a country to analyze and research, which the NRA and the gun manufacturers have been very good at keeping money from going to the CDC to study gun violence in America, but there are a lot of universities doing it now. We need to be studying this issue. We need to be putting our heads around it and saying this is what can work to prevent mass shootings and prevent this kind of carnage from happening on our soil here in America.
Speaking of carnage, I would like to ask Wayne LaPierre, wouldn't it have been nice if maybe in his idea, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have good guys with guns. So those people in that crowd, if they had all had guns, you think they could have protected themselves from an automatic weapon with a handgun? That's not the answer. The more guns, the more carnage.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that.
And we've seen it. We've seen it with states that have good gun laws. Per capita, their crime rate and gun carnage, gun deaths are much lower. So states with good gun laws have lower death rates. It's very simple. It equates.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very good at their rhetoric, and they're very good at fooling the public, and they're very good at manipulating politicians with not only money but with threats of, if you don't vote with us, then you're against us and we'll support your next rival. And that's how they do it. And we as a nation have to start standing up to that and saying, no, this is not okay, and we're not going to allow it to happen anymore.
And this idea, I mean, you hear these simplistic little explanations from the gun lobby. You know, things like
Guns don't
criminals are going to get guns no matter what. Well, that's ridiculous. That's not true.
It's not true.
All you have to do, and all of this is preventable, you have to regulate the weapons. And it's easily done. I mean, one easy thing to do would be put background checks on all gun sales. That way they would be stopped selling guns out of the trunks of cars. Guns would become much more expensive because they're not easy to find. They say, well, they'll steal them. Well, guns are hard to steal. I mean, the amount of guns on the street right now would dry up. I mean, it would absolutely dry up. You couldn't be able, someone like the guy that killed our daughter didn't even know that he could go buy that weapon. He was afraid. He thought he had already been turned in by his psychiatrist, and he should have been, but he wasn't. We have loopholes in that system, just like we have loopholes in our gun system. So put it all together, we're sitting ducks in this country.
Stop.
Hang on, I'll grab it. I'll bring it to you.
I'm so sorry.
No, please. You guys, no apology necessary. Here you go, I'll get that to you.
San Antonio.
I can wait.
I'll turn mine off. It'll ring next. I'm surprised it hasn't already rang. I forgot
Yeah,
about
me
that.
too. As crazy as it's been this morning. Okay.
Okay, hang on.
Everybody's phone down and off.
Right, I know, right?
Was yours on?
My ringer wasn't on, but it was definitely on. You know, is there another?
Yeah, it's mine vibrating.
Oh,
Just
okay.
gonna turn it off.
No. I mean,
No, it's okay. I could believe me. I can turn it off.
what? And yeah. So, since your situation, has there been any headway?
Yes, since 5 years ago when Jesse was slaughtered, since then 18 states have passed background checks, so that's huge, and we're seeing an increase on bills for domestic violence to be able to take the gun away from somebody who has been accused of threatening their wife or significant other. So we are making headway in the states, which is why we go state to state to state to state to work on this issue, because we know that, especially currently, we're not going to see any movement from the federal government. Hopefully this might change some minds and some hearts. We're going to DC in a couple of weeks, and we'll be meeting with a lot of people there, and hopefully we can convince some of them that now is the time to take action. America wants this. We know that 90% of Americans want expended background checks at the minimum. They want that. But we really need to be addressing these semi-automatic weapons that are out there and how easily converted they are, and the damage that they do. I mean, my daughter was shot 6 times, and the headshot that killed her left a 5-inch hole in her left side of her head, and she was
So when we think about this, think about Scalise that was just hit with one bullet.
One.
He was hit with one bullet. That bullet traveled through his body, and this man is a different person now. His colleagues probably don't know it or don't realize it yet, but he's been shot and almost killed.
Right.
So he's not going to be the same, no matter, even if he thinks he is. But the devastation that these weapons do, they need to be very, very closely vetted. And it's just like we're going backwards here. I mean, the problem is national. We're making headway at the grassroots level. We're getting laws changed in the states. And we're doing right now, with the Trump administration, we're doing a lot of protecting what we've got, because they're trying to take away what we've had since 1934. They're trying to run that law back or make it non-effective. So, yeah, we're having trouble at the federal level. And that's really the only way we can move it, is concentrate on getting our people in local governments and getting a change started there. It's going to take a while, but that's what we're doing.
I think one of my producers has been texting me. When it comes to the notoriety, I mean, I know you guys.
Notoriety.
I mean, which I think is a.
Well, we did research on that, and we knew that in California they've been doing 20 years of research, or they've proven that there are copycats out there. We know that the killer at Sandy Hook studied the killer of Aurora, and the Aurora killer studied Columbine. So we know that they do this. They wouldn't commit suicide anyway, but they want to be famous or infamous, and they don't want to go out as an unknown, which they've been all their lives.
So with no notoriety, and saying once you've identified who the killer is, and once that story has been, okay, this is the killer, this is who he is, this is how old he was, this is a picture of him, then you stop. You stop. You don't need to keep showing that picture, because the damage it does to those who have survived and those who are fighting for their lives is tremendous. Plus it encourages anybody else out there that's thinking, well, I want to be the next bad guy. And there are plenty of them, unfortunately. So we ask that those pictures are done away with, and then you start focusing on the survivors and the victims and telling their stories, and focus on the weapons and how easy it is to get these weapons. So you're taking on the role as educator now, and not just news teller. You're educating the public on, how did this guy get all 10 weapons? What was going on in his life that made it that easy for him to go over the edge, so to speak, and decide to not only kill himself, but as many other people as he could. And we need to start examining those things. And the news, traditionally, the media has not been good about it. They've been good at sensationalizing, and then they're good at 24 hours later it's over with and we've moved on. And we never go back to the survivors and say, how are you doing 5 years later? How are you, are you ever going to be able to walk again? Are you ever going to be able to talk again? Are you going to be able to follow your dreams that you once had? And if we were to see that and cover that, I truly believe we'd stop this in a heartbeat, because nobody.
So they're going to be asking questions. They're going to be... the news are going to be, so what, let's find out why he did that. What made him do it? What was wrong? How can we stop this? We can't predict any of these. There's no way to stop them. The only way to stop them is prevent them from having access with the tools to do it with. We're not going to be able to predict any of these. And these guys are telling us something. They're sending us a message. We're miserable. This society, they're going to blame it on somebody. It's never their fault. And so there's so many people out there like that right now in this country that are disillusioned, disheartened, hungry, homeless. I mean, we have a society that we can really, really make some difference in if we could just realize that what we're allowing in this country to continue to happen over and over again is preventable. And we're just standing by like and do nothing. Mm-hmm. That's the frustrating part.
I agree. I mean, and do you think the similar, you guys certainly feel like that this now will hopefully perpetuate your mission?
You know, every time one of these shootings happens, we hope that change will follow, and that the people who can create good laws and pass good laws will do so. And it fails time and time again. But we know Americans want it to happen. So we're hoping that the Americans will use their voice. Our citizens will start using their voice and say, I've got to get involved somehow. Whether that's calling your congressman, your senator, writing letters, writing op-eds, whatever it takes, you're taking steps and you're not giving up. I mean, it would be very easy for the two of us 5 years ago to just give up and curl into a ball and literally die. The pain that we live with every day is not something anybody else wants to have, but we've used it as a catalyst to try to save others from knowing the same kind of anguish that we live with. And unfortunately, more and more are joining us every day. We have a mass shooting in this country every day, at least one.
And I can tell you this, they're not going to stop. They're only going to get worse.
Yes.
Because we're not doing anything about it.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, the next one is going to be worse than this, and there's going to be more than one person involved. And this is domestic terrorism. This is domestic terrorism.
Absolutely.
These people are not, they don't have a plan together, but there's so many out there that they see what's happening, and this is the way they want to go out.
Yeah,
this is their and like the guy in Isla Vista that wrote the
manifest.
The manifesto. They all want to get their word out. They all want to be known for something, and this guy thought that he was perfectly right because he was treated badly and shunned by the female sex, and he just, no, like I said, there's no way to predict it. They don't even know themselves when they're going to do it. This guy's probably been thinking about this for many, many years.
What, and finally, this is my final question. What message would you guys like to get out there?
My message to America, not just to the Denver area, but to everyone, every citizen in this country, is to wake up. Get involved. Find out the statistics. Find out the facts. Don't just trust the rhetoric from the gun lobby and the gun manufacturers, because they're good at that. They've had 40 years of doing it pretty much unabated. Nobody stood up to them. So now people are standing up to them. And the more of us that stand up and question why this is happening and asking to make change happen, it'll happen. But we have to have all the voices. You can't just sit back and watch Fox TV or the news and say, oh my God, that's just terrible. I hope it never happens to me, because guess what? You're 1 degree of separation from this happening to you. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's 1 degree. All of us, when we go out and speak, we ask, have any of you been directly affected by gun violence? And a few hands will go up. But when we dig deeper and say, how many of you know someone who has committed suicide by gun? A few more hands. How many of you know somebody who has been raped by gunpoint? How many of you know somebody who's been robbed at gunpoint? And by the time we're finished asking just a few questions, almost every hand in the audience will be up. So we're all affected by this. And every time we watch this on TV, we're affected, because our hearts either break further because it continues to happen, or we steel our hearts against it and say, that could never happen to me. I'm okay. I'm safe. And they don't realize that, no, none of us are safe anymore.
And that's not going to change. It's not going to change overnight. It's not going to change quickly. People are going to have the same feeling. They're going to go home right now and say, well, I dodged a bullet. Yeah, you dodged a bullet this time.
This time.
But there's going to be others, I promise you, and there's no way we can really stop it. It's like a huge ship. It takes a while to turn it. And that's what we're trying to do right now. You have to work at the very bottom and work our way up, because we don't have a Congress now that's going to do anything about it, and we know that.
Well, I think it's important to remember, too, that we never thought this would happen to us. Jessie was in a shooting 7 weeks before she was killed. And she escaped that shooting. She happened to have a feeling that she needed to walk away from the area in the mall that they were in Toronto. And they walked away, and 2 minutes later, there was a shooting, and 2 people were killed and several wounded. And she saw all that. She saw the bodies being taken out. She understood that, wow, that could happen to me. I was that close to it happening to me. And she called me from Toronto, and I said, honey, don't worry, you've seen the worst of humanity. That will never, ever happen to you again. And 7 weeks later, we were burying her.
Yeah. But we didn't know how rampant mass murders were in this country. We had no idea, because we, like the people we're trying to teach and now, we were oblivious to it. We didn't know that you could buy a gun out of a trunk of a car without an ID.
Yeah.
I mean, so we didn't know the availability of guns until we started asking questions and saw how easy it was, that you can buy 4,000 rounds of ammunition online without even showing your driver's license. So we want to stop that.
Bottom line, what is it that you guys, what would you like to see happen?
We'd like to see, personally, we'd like to see background checks on the sale of every single gun in America. So we know where that gun has been, that it's been sold to somebody who can legally have a gun. We'd like to see the ammunition more controlled, so the 223s that are being used to kill people are more regulated. We'd like to see semi-automatic weapons be better regulated. And we know that's a big ask, but boy, until we do that as a society, we're going to have these mass murders and these mass shootings that destroy lives.
And I'll tell you one thing that we definitely do not want to see happen, and that's national reciprocity.
Yeah.
We do not want to see Georgia, who has absolutely ridiculous gun laws, easy to get a gun. If the NRA now is pushing national reciprocity, that means the gun license in the lowest state can bring his gun to New York or California, which has really good gun laws, and there's nothing that state can do about it, because it's a national law that says he can bring his gun anywhere he wants. They're trying to get that passed right now. That means all the gun laws that we passed in all the states will be null and void. Mm-hmm. That can't happen.
So where they have open carry of AR-15s loaded in Texas, they can go into California and do the same thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think any American wants to be walking down the street and see somebody that they don't know, a total stranger, that they don't know what their intent is, walking down the street with an AR-15 that's loaded.
Right. And now even less after today.
Yeah.